2024 SEC Football Conference opponents reveal happened this past week, and a lot of reaction from it, right? A lot that is going to change in 2024 as Texas and Oklahoma head into the conference. We're going to kind of digest it. We've got the opponent schedule up in front of us, but first set the stage. Texas and Oklahoma are coming in. What is the SEC doing that's different as they expand to a 16 team mega conference?
Yeah, if you haven't heard by now, they are scrapping divisions. So there's no more East Division, no more West Division. There's some fan bases that are really, really excited about that, as they have, been really struggling with the same schedule every single year. But no more divisions. They're protecting one rivalry game for each team right now and sticking at 8 games. So there are one team, at least right now, that you'll play every single year and rotate through the other 7. So what I really like that they did on this schedule, I guess getting into the weeds of it, they did a good job of protecting, I think, most of the games that will be part of that future 3 and 6 model. I don't know that there's necessarily a game on there that you say that has to be played that will not be played in 2024 when it comes to a rivalry standpoint. Alabama's still playing Auburn and Tennessee, right? Georgia's still playing Auburn and Florida. They protected all of those games that really need to be protected. So they did a great job with that. We kind of got into the weeds of the 8 game versus 9 game and the 1 protected versus 3 protected, but at least for right now, they're rolling with the 1 protected and 7 rotating. So who knows how long that lasts, but at least for 2024, it looks like they did a really good job.
I think so. I think for what inevitably has to be a band-aid solution, I think the SEC has gotten a lot of backlash, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago. They've gotten a lot of backlash from people acting like this is the permanent solution going forward, and that's just not the case. I think 2024 gets to be a test year for a couple of reasons. One, this is a 16-team conference that has multiple national title contenders. Going hand in hand with that, you're going to have a 12-team playoff. And inevitably, the SEC wants to set themselves up to get the most number of teams in that playoff as possible, right? While also kind of protecting the integrity of the rivalries, keeping the fans happy. Finally, and most importantly, the media rights deal is just uh, probably going to be amended, right? The SEC is not going to give ESPN and the Mouse free content with a ninth conference game. We talked about all of that on a podcast a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested in hearing more about that after this one, go back. I believe it's 2 weeks now, and you can listen to our discussion over the 8 versus 9 game model in the SEC. Overall, I think that the commentary on this has been fairly positive. I mean, it's the internet. You know, there are going to be trolls. There are always going to be people that are unhappy. But overall, I think, like you said, they did a pretty good job of keeping everything historically intact. Now, when it comes to maybe the competitive balance, I don't know that there are any easy schedules, but dude, Florida has a historically brutal schedule, and we can get into that if you want.
Yeah, if you want to talk winners and losers, I think
Yeah.
Florida's definitely on the losing end of that. Vanderbilt, I think, I don't know how many favors you could draw them up to even try to make them a winner. They definitely have a brutal one as well. And Oklahoma, welcome to the freaking SEC, right? Like Oklahoma pulling it up right now. Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee at home, Texas, and Dallas, and then road trips to Auburn, LSU, and Ole Miss. That is a really rude awakening and rude introduction to the Southeastern Conference. But yeah, I from a competitive balance standpoint, you look at, I guess, possible winners. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Arkansas and A&M are the only two that avoided both Alabama and Georgia in 2024. So you have to circle those as huge winners. When Arkansas and Alabama and Texas A&M have been playing Alabama every single year, getting both of those off the schedule are huge for their win total hopes. I think Texas, I don't know that they necessarily got off easy. Their road schedule, other than the trip to A&M, certainly, no offense to the fans up in Fayetteville, I know that was a house of horrors for Texas a couple seasons ago, but it could have been a lot worse from a road trip standpoint. Anytime you draw Vanderbilt on the road, I think that you're pretty happy with that draw. So, yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to make this completely equal. I know I've seen reported that they were talking about 10-year models, looking back 10 years to see how competitive teams were and trying to find competitive balance in that format. But
Yeah.
yeah, overall, I think big losers are Florida and Oklahoma, big winners, Texas A&M and Arkansas.
Florida's 2024 schedule, which is not there are no I say there are no. They have the non-conference dates lined up and the cocktail party against Georgia is lined up. But just to give you a full picture of who Florida has to play in 2024, they have to play their non-conference schedule is Miami, Samford, UCF, and Florida State. They obviously played Georgia in the cocktail party, and then they've got Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Texas. Mississippi State, Tennessee, Texas are all on the road. They are able to get Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M in the swamp. I put it out on Twitter. I was like, where are the must-win games in this schedule? Because you're not getting a break. Like there is
Nope.
no other than Samford. There's not a single week on this schedule that I think you go, okay, we may have lost last week, but we get to take a deep breath, focus on this. Let's just go out, take care of business. We'll go 1-0 this week, and we'll carry that momentum into the rest of the season. Like there is not a single part of that schedule that you go, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
It is brutal.
Yeah, and anybody that's, complaining about the number of Power 5 teams that SEC programs schedule each year, just take a gander at that Florida schedule because 11 of the 12 are now Power 5 programs. Whatever that means in 2024, we have no idea. But 11 of 12 games against Power 5 competition. Man, if Billy Napier makes it through 2023, which I am not convinced that he will, it's hard to see him navigating that 2024 schedule and coming out unscathed, at least from a job standpoint. But I mean, that's neither here nor there right now. There's obviously a lot of football to be played between now and the end of 2024. But yeah, just setting themselves up for a really, really difficult transition. I think the other loser by default here, as I'm looking at these other opponents, I think the Georgia Bulldogs are a loser, are they not? I think, they are finally they've taken a lot of heat for their 2023 schedule. Not everything's their fault. The SEC came in and told them they had to cancel their prime out of conference date with Oklahoma because
Right.
the schedule is going to set up. They don't get Oklahoma on the 2024 schedule.
They don't.
But
Which
they
we
do
all
have.
had we all had put in Sharpie because of
Yes.
why would they tell Georgia to cancel that game if they're not playing them the next year?
Well, and we've seen, in the recent past, we've seen, I'm thinking North Carolina, Wake Forest have played a non-conference game
Yeah,
because they
last
weren't
year.
happy that they were playing each other enough, right? We've seen it in college football that if you really want to keep the schedule going, you can. But yeah, so in consolation, I guess, for canceling Oklahoma, they get home dates with their rival Auburn, Florida and Jacksonville, Mississippi State, and Tennessee at home. They travel to Alabama, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Texas. So
Yeah.
quite the step up in the level of competition, especially with those road games. When you think, I mean, in 2023, we're kind of penciling in everything as a pretty winnable game, except for maybe the one at Tennessee as the one difficult road game, and you have at least 3 in 2024.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I don't know that I'd call them a loser in this sense, but compared to 2023, major step up in competition, which listen is only fair, right? Like this 2023 schedule is pathetic, and it makes it really hard not to think if Georgia doesn't, if Georgia wins that game uh, at Neyland Stadium against Tennessee, where do they trip up? I don't know that there's a spot on their calendar this year that really has you shaking in your boots ahead of probably an inevitable appearance against the SEC West contender in Atlanta. But yeah, the 2024 schedule is tough. The road games to Alabama and to Texas specifically, that's a pretty lethal 1-2 punch. Take it or leave it, whatever you think about Ole Miss and Kentucky. I don't necessarily think that Vaught Hemingway is a tough place to play. Kroger Field has not historically been a super tough place to play. So other than the fact that they're staying at the Hilton Inn or whatever,
Yeah. They might have to stay in
whatever.
the dorms. They, that
That's
could be
true.
a problem.
That's true. You'd like to think Kentucky has that scheduled out, but I do think it's interesting. You look at some of the more traditional contenders. LSU's schedule is could be very tricky. Home games against Alabama, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt. You know, Vanderbilt's not doing anything for you, but we've watched Ole Miss play spoiler on the road several times. And listen, Oklahoma, I don't know that they're going to be a contender this year. At least when I'm kind of messing around with my Big 12 projections, I don't have Oklahoma in that mix. Next year, though, they're still bringing in so much talent. It's hard to say that the Sooners aren't a year or two away from being another 9-10 win team, or at least threatening to be that. Now, looking at that 2024 schedule, they've got Texas at home, technically in Dallas, home game against Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, but then on the road against LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, and Missouri. That's a schedule that's very, very tricky. Back to LSU, away games against Texas A&M, Arkansas, Florida, South Carolina. Again, not really a big breather there, considering Arkansas is a rival. Who knows what, like I said, what Ole Miss will give you. So the Tigers, I think, need to make their hay again this year. And make a run at an SEC championship before really having to slog through it next season.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of roster turnover in 24 for LSU as well. And look, A&M hasn't been an easy place to win in the Jimbo Fisher era for
No,
LSU.
they've lost
Correct me
every
if I'm wrong.
time.
Yeah, they are over at Kyle Field since Jimbo Fisher has taken over there. So, yeah,
Sure.
really tough schedule for LSU. I mean, Mississippi State, I think their home, they really didn't get a good home road balance. I don't think, if I'm looking at that schedule, I think their
No.
easier games are at home and they're way tougher games. Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, and the Egg Bowl are on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could go through and spend an hour just going through everybody's schedule. And obviously, a lot's going to change between now and 2024. There could be a lot of teams that we don't think are contenders could surprise this year. They could make a big splash in the portal, or they could fire their coach because this is the SEC. And we see at least one surprise firing a year, it feels like. So who knows exactly how these teams will line up, but yeah, I think we've done a good job of kind of highlighting the winners and losers so far.
Gracious him! How about that?